people through a musical fashion and the potentially lethal consequences of its abuse.
It's just such an intense feeling. Everything's just perfect. It's above everyone. Cloud nine. You're dancing, you can dance and you feel so full of energy. You can just walk up to people, put your arms around them. Everybody's in the same buzz as you. It's just ecstasy, man. It's just ecstasy.
You just have so much energy. You just feel like dancing forever. You can't stop dancing. Even when you're walking around, you're dancing.
I'll buzz from this until next week. Thursday or Friday, the end of next weekend, I'll still be remembering what I was doing tonight.
In less than 3 years, rave music has established itself as one of the most startling and controversial musical fashions for many years. What distinguishes rave from other fads is the key role of a recently rediscovered drug. Not all the kids in this film take drugs, but many do, for ecstasy is at the very heart of rave.
I believe that ecstasy is absolutely central to the rave scene. I don't think the rave scene would have emerged had it not been for ecstasy. The whole environment is structured, if you like, to maximise the effect of the drugs. That's the whole purpose. It seems to me that's the whole purpose of the scene's existence, is as a celebration of the drug ecstasy.
Like heroin or cocaine, ecstasy is defined as a Class A drug. Mainly for this reason, it's left to the police to control its spread.
Operation Patriot, another weekend. The object of the exercise, obviously, is to get out on the streets and to detect the persons who are possessing the drugs with intent to supply, and also those in possession and using for their own use. I'll just say this to you, all you need to do while you're out there is to remember this: you are policemen, you need to be polite to these people, and above all, be professional.
Grady Kevin. There you go. Yeah, I'm going in with one. Penny's got the radio.
Staffordshire Police have launched one of the most ambitious, high-profile operations against the drug ecstasy. Operation Patriot was launched in September 1991. Since then, there have been almost 500 arrests and some notable seizures of drugs. The operation has been focused here in Longton, an unremarkable part of Stoke-on-Trent, which, rightly or wrongly, has become notorious as a centre for drug dealing. On this car park, week after week, the police arrest people buying and selling drugs. This Saturday night is no exception.
Is that all you got? Yeah. You got anything else? Just tell us. Anything else? Just tell me.
Just a knee.
Where you got that from?
Oh, I bought it a few weeks ago.
Just shine as you torch. What's this?
Is this your cannabis as well, mate? Yeah.
Who's the cannabis?
It is.
So I'm arresting you on suspicion of possession of a controlled drug. You didn't have to say anything unless you were to do so, but what you say may have given evidence. Do you understand that? Do you understand that?
Listen to me. Okay. I have to tell you that you've been arrested on suspicion of a lawful possession of a controlled drug, namely ecstasy and cannabis, and that you're not obliged to say anything unless you wish to do so, but what you did say may give evidence. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
Okay, come with me now, we'll go to the police station. Okay?
See you later.
Ciao, darling.
During the evening, there are 15 arrests. The most important concerns a man caught with 30 tablets of ecstasy. Opposite the car park where these arrests took place is the nightclub Shelly's. Shelly's is one of the best-known rave clubs in Britain. Young people come from all across the Midlands and the North.
Brilliant atmosphere. The people are all, you know, happy like. It's good atmosphere. I drive 65 miles nearly every other week to come up here.
It's the best club in the country. Can't beat it.
You're never going to beat Shelly's. The atmosphere, the people. I never even knew these.
Yeah, we met here.
We met here. Nice to meet you. How the devil are you?
The police want Shelly's closed down. They say that drugs have been sold both inside and outside the club, and on the basis of these allegations have persuaded Stoke-on-Trent councillors and magistrates to withdraw the club's entertainment and liquor licences. The club's management says it stopped drug dealing inside the premises and the police have yet to prove their allegations in a court of law. The case will be decided by the Crown Court at a later date. John Matthews, the owner, is a former landscape gardener. He says the police want to shut his club simply to justify the high cost and poor results of Operation Patriot.
I think I've become a scapegoat because of the magnitude and the name and the success of Shelly's, the name it carries, the reputation that it's got, and it's a huge feather in somebody's cap if they can close it down. Because, as I've said, it won't stop the drug scene, it won't stop the rave scene, so in actual fact, what has it achieved?
Hugh Tyson was in charge of the drug squad for much of Operation Patriot. Drug dealing in Longton, he said, had simply become intolerable. Shelly's was a part of both the problem and the solution.
Operation Patriot is not just about closing Shelly's nightclub. It's to combat open and widespread drugs dealing in the town centre. It was identified that because of the rave music scene, drugs were openly being sold in public car parks. I went up and saw for myself that drugs were being sold from vehicles parked in Cook Street car park, and right next to these drugs dealers there were people loading their cars with children.
We've been castigated, if you wish, for something that is not our fault. It's a problem that we are trying to address, we are trying to control, but it's an impossible one to control. Absolutely impossible. There comes a situation where you cannot stop someone who wants to take a drug. Drugs are renowned right the way through the UK. They're in every walk of life. They're in as early as schools, they're in rock concerts, they're at football matches, they're in nightclubs, they're in raves, they're in pubs, they're in the street, they're in the park. Drugs are here, and drugs, as hateful as they are, they're here to stay.
We firmly believe that we have a duty to vigorously enforce the Misuse of Drugs Act and stop drug abuse in Longton. It may drive it elsewhere. Who's to say that it won't? But as long as the problem is in Staffordshire, then our policy is to deal with it firmly.
If you got the money in your pocket, you can get it from anywhere.
You get local dealers down your local shopping areas will have it. Go to any pub, somebody in there's bound to know somewhere where they get it at any time, any day.
Where we live, 6 or 7 pubs definitely. It's no around that you could go in there, you could say, oh, I want some acid, oh, I want some E's, where can I get them? And you'd have 2 or 3 dealers just there, straight away.
Isn't it true that you've made money out of the drug ecstasy?
I wouldn't like to think I've made money out of the drug ecstasy. Let me see if I could channel that differently. I've certainly made money out of the rave scene. So have a lot of other people, record labels, artists, bands, DJs, Top of the Pops, BBC, ITV. Anyone that has featured any article on rave or they've carried a programme on that, the media, the press, magazines, yeah, we've all made money out of the rave scene. If we are saying that the rave can't survive without ecstasy, then maybe inadvertently and certainly not illegally, I suppose we can be accused of making money out of ecstasy.
I'm certainly unhappy about the publicity that the drug gets through records. It's a drug that is regularly mentioned in records that get into the top 20, and you can hear it on any radio station, including Radio 1. And I feel that may even promote the drug itself. As far as publicity goes, I don't think that parents of these young people are fully aware of the dangers of the drug.
Hi from Top of the Pops. We're still the biggest and the best, and we kick off with a group of guys who are sure to steal your heart. Straight in at number 3, Smarties and Sesame's Treat.
This was one of the most controversial rave hits, Sesame's Treat by the Smart He's. Many people criticised it for the overt way it targeted the very young. Other songs have also carried direct or indirect references to ecstasy. Television has often unwittingly helped to launch the drug into countless homes. This partly explains its phenomenal rise.
5 years ago, Ecstasy had not even come onto the market. We'd never heard of it. It has become extremely popular very quickly, and I think promoted by the rave music. It is quite freely available now, almost everywhere. It is the most popular, sought-after drug by young people. And as long as that is the case, then the demand, I feel sure, will be met by the suppliers.
The lad in here is 14, he said his first day to know. What did you just say? He's 14, it's his first day. He said his first ecstasy to know. What's it like? It's excellent. Everybody's just sharing things. You see one fight like, if I had a quid, like, you need it. Yeah, man. Right, sorted. This is excellent. It's the best day of my life, I swear. This is the best.
The roots of rave can be traced across the Atlantic to the hip-hop music of Detroit and the house music of Chicago. A few British DJs working in holiday resorts in Spain then brought the music, complete with a continental influence, to Britain. Acid House was born in a blaze of publicity that fed on stories of drugs, secret gigs and huge illegal warehouse parties.
16 policemen were injured when they tried to break up an acid house party.
In all, 56 people were arrested when police raided parties in...
Police have been examining firearms and drugs seized in a raid on an acid house party last night.
This was the popular face of Acid House, defiant, aggressive, anarchistic. But as the police effectively stopped the illegal parties, the music, the drugs and the philosophy behind it subtly changed. Rave is very different. Whereas Acid House was associated with violence, raves are conspicuously peaceful. Upon one thing everybody agrees: rave audiences are among the most friendly and charming.
This rave tonight is better than Fantasia because I've loads of people I recognise from everywhere else, and that's a really good tune coming on now. Oh, I don't want to dance, but I won't, I'll be playing myself. At Fantasia, I didn't see anyone. Well, I saw loads of people, but I didn't recognise the people I knew. And this is a melon I got bought because I never buy anything for myself at Raves because I couldn't be bothered to carry the money, you see. And I dyed my hair today red because I was blonde, and my name's Nelly, and it was Helen. But it's Nelly, Helen spelled backwards.
Nourished by scores of independent promoters and record producers, rave may have reached its peak this year. Certainly, it's never been bigger.
It has exploded again this year in probably a bigger way than ever before. There are thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of kids out there who are raving every single weekend. You've got huge areas in cities throughout Britain where you've got real deprivation. You've got kids leaving school without any jobs. And going to a rave is a way for them to forget about all that, just for a few hours. So they go there and they just basically go completely crazy, and it's like a kind of like a release valve.
In just 4 years, ecstasy has become the third most popular illegal drug after amphetamine and cannabis. Nobody knows how many people take the drug, and what estimates there are regarded with suspicion.
The estimate that's usually quoted is 500,000. I think if you go to any nightclub in any major city or any small town, you'll find that as many as anywhere between 50% of the people in that nightclub and 80% of the people in that nightclub will probably use an ecstasy at any given time. I think 500,000 is probably a conservative estimate. I think ecstasy is sensitising, I think, a generation to illegal drugs. I think if you look at recent research that's been done with 14-year-olds, apparently 1 in 3 14-year-olds admit to having taken an illegal drug. Now, I think that can only be linked to the centrality of ecstasy in today's youth culture.
Ecstasy, or MDMA, was first synthesized by a German pharmaceutical company in 1914. It was briefly used for therapeutic reasons in the United States in the 70s, but its illegal use, mainly by students, led to its ban there in 1985. Britain banned ecstasy in 1977. How does ecstasy work? The drug causes the release of a neurotransmitter called serotonin. This profoundly affects mood, enhancing all one sees, feels, hears and touches. But it also affects the body's temperature control system. The British rave scene is unique for its extraordinary dancing. People dance for hours. Some, though not all, take drugs to sustain this immense release of energy. Sometimes, however, the dancing can cause serious medical problems. It's the physical exertion of the dancing that poses the greatest short-term medical risks. The symptoms can include exhaustion, dehydration, blood clotting irregularities, kidney and liver damage, and heart problems. Although serious medical emergencies are rare, they have, in many cases, proved fatal.
The teenagers, and they usually are teenagers that come to us, vary. A lot of them might have a racing pulse, they'll be sweating, confused, and some of those people actually get better on quite straightforward supportive treatment and are able to be discharged. However, we also see some patients who have this strange condition known as hyperpyrexia, where the core temperature of the body rises uncontrollably, and we had a death from ecstasy here just a short while ago. The patient who died was unconscious. He had a core temperature of 42 degrees C, and that's very significantly high. His core temperature continued to rise despite cooling, despite drugs, and he had a very serious cardiac dysrhythmia. I say the heart rhythm was disturbed, and disturbed to such an extent that it was uncorrectable. And he died on our intensive care unit several days after admission, in spite of intensive therapy.
More than 25 young people are believed to have died so far as a direct result of ecstasy. Among them was a young man called David Brown from the village of Countersthorpe in Leicestershire.
He was a normal 22-year-old person. He lived at home with us. He was a good family member. A normal, healthy person, as far as I was aware. It came as a very great shock when we found that he was involved in taking drugs. It's difficult for parents to be able to detect if the children are actually involved. I think it's only the youngsters themselves that know if they're taking drugs or if they're not. And I think for their own sakes, I would say to any of them that are taking drugs, don't do it, because it's been proved in this instance, if you get involved in drugs, it can take your life. I did have 3 children. I've now only got 2 daughters. We are slowly getting out of it now, but it's something that will live with us for the rest of our lives.
On Friday, September the 18th, a group of young people from the village of Bayston Hill, Shrewsbury, drove to a rave at Wolverhampton Civic Hall. One of the party was Simon Pitchford. Later that evening, Simon took ill. In these toilets, his friends tried to help him, but his condition steadily deteriorated. Later, an ambulance was called, but Simon Pitchford died before he reached the hospital. He was 18 years old. One of the people who tried to help him that night was his friend, 22-year-old Christopher Formston.
He was just a general good mate, I suppose, no different than everybody else. Very, well, to say, very, very kind-hearted, never do anything to hurt anyone. I saw him about 3 times during that night. He had a big smile on his face. He shake each other's hand as you do. Tell me you're having a good time and that. And I saw him again about 1:45, 1 o'clock. As I say, he comes stumbling through the door. His eyes rolling and looking pretty scared. I took him to the toilets with another friend. We started dousing cold water on his head, try and cool him down, give him a drink. And that didn't work too well, so we took him outside of the toilets, went upstairs to put him by a window which was open, try and get some cold air to him. And his condition just deteriorated from there, I suppose. I come back, I start putting my arm around his ear, and that's when he started shaking very violently, as if someone's put an electric shock through him or something. And I walked down the stairs because I couldn't take any more. I was that far away from going the way he was. Walked down the stairs, turned round and he was just on the floor with his eyes wide open, motionless. But I mean, what he went through was, it's the most scariest thing I've ever seen him, apart from anyone, not just because he's my friend, but because of the fear on his face. It was as if he was facing death, just looking death straight in the face. That was what he looked like. You can't tell people what to do, you can't tell them what to do. I mean, something like this, to me, something like this is going to be the only thing that'll ever make people see light and see what these people are really like, see what these drugs are really like. You can't tell people what to do. They're just, you know, something like this has got to happen for them to realise how stupid it is. It really is.
On September the 24th, Christopher Formston was charged with possession of a controlled drug and with unlawfully supplying Simon Pitchford with ecstasy. His case will be heard at the Crown Court at a later date. Four years ago, virtually no ecstasy was entering Britain. However, the amount of the drug seized, according to police, a good measure of overall consumption, has increased more than 1,000 times since then. The drugs are manufactured in illegal laboratories, mainly in Germany and Holland. Manufacturing conditions are very poor, so much of the ecstasy that reaches British streets is cut with poisons and other drugs. Nobody knows what's in the drug they're buying.
The problem with ecstasy is that manufacturing and distribution of the drug are in the hands of, like, criminals. What happens when they make a bad batch? You think they throw it away and start again? No, but what happens is that they sell the bad batch anyway as ecstasy. When people go out and spend their £15 on ecstasy, they really don't have any idea what it is that they're buying. And probably 50% of what's sold as ecstasy is something else. What that might be is anybody's guess.
This programme wanted to test the quality of the ecstasy being sold on the streets. To do this, we went to 4 separate raves. At each one, we were able to buy the drug without difficulty. The tablets each cost between £15 and £20. At a rave at Branston's Club in Hockley, we bought this drug. At the rave at the Aston Villa Sport and Leisure Centre, we bought this. At the Edge Club in Coventry, we bought this. And at a rave at the Coast to Coast Club in Birmingham City Centre, we bought this tablet. We then had the samples analysed by the poisons unit at Guy's Hospital. They contained caffeine, codeine, amphetamine and paracetamol. 2 contained MDA, a potentially dangerous amphetamine relative of ecstasy. None of the 4 samples sold as ecstasy contained any ecstasy at all.
It's just getting really bad nowadays. You don't know what you're buying.
I've heard of people like selling tablets to put dogs down, and they're selling to, like, this geezer took it, yeah? He's screwed up badly.
I don't want to, like, go killing myself on anything like smash glass or, I don't know, Ajax powder or anything like that.
Every time you're taking it, you're taking a big risk. I mean, you just don't know what you are taking. It could be anything. It could kill you on the spot.
Music and drugs go back a long way. The link between the two perhaps reached its peak with the hippie movement of the 60s. In those days, there were many establishment warnings about drugs, but few of the worst fears materialised. For this reason, many of today's youngsters remain unconcerned by warnings about ecstasy. In spite of the large number of people who take ecstasy, there is at present remarkably little knowledge about the drug's long-term effects, and what research there is mostly taking place illegally on the streets.
My biggest concern about the drug is the number of people that's taken it, given how little we know about it. It's as though 500,000 people are engaged in an enormous field trial for a substance that we really know very little about.
The most important question is, does ecstasy cause permanent brain damage? The drug is known to have caused brain damage in animals, but scientists are reluctant to conclude the same for humans. At present, there is no conclusive evidence to suggest the drug does damage humans, but some scientists have considerable worries. Dr. John Henry is a consultant physician at the National Poisons Unit at Guy's Hospital. One of his jobs is to monitor the growth of the use of ecstasy and the dangers it presents.
My biggest worry about ecstasy is the fact that it may have long-term effects which are not noted immediately. People may be on the drug for a while and then give it up, but it's possible that months later or years later they may develop depression. I don't know what proportion of people will develop depression once they've come off ecstasy, but I'm quite sure that a small proportion will. And my real worry is that that proportion may be very high. It's possible that 50% of the people who take ecstasy may develop severe suicidal depression in years to come.
If Dr. Henry is correct, the dimensions of this problem could be greater than almost any comparable health crisis since the war. Yet in spite of this, Britain has no long-term research programme into the lasting effects of the drug. Illegal drugs are of little interest to pharmaceutical companies. But shouldn't the government fund this research, given the critical need for information? Would young people still take the drug if they knew it damaged their brains? The Home Office Minister, Michael Jack, said he thought such research might actually be counterproductive.
To talk about doing long-term research into it merely prolongs, if you like, the situation in terms of getting the message through to people that ecstasy should not be tampered with. We know enough about it now for that simple message to get through and to lodge in people's minds.
There certainly isn't enough research being done into MDMA at the moment. We need a lot of research because so many people are using the drug at the moment, and we need to find out what's going to happen to them. We need research at a sociological level. We need to know how many people are suffering adverse effects of various types. Also, we need more research into the severe acute effects. We need to know why these people collapse and die in clubs. And also, we need to know much more about how ecstasy affects the brain, how it affects the brain terminals, and whether the effects are reversible or not. That is one of the key questions. We need to know really how full the recovery is after any damage that occurs.
I mean, I believe that there's been no money for research because I think people think of drug problems as something that doesn't affect them. I think people think that people who take drugs are the criminal classes. They don't think of them as our children, our mothers, our sisters. We don't think of them ourselves. As a consequence, I think drug research isn't a very high priority. I think drugs are a technology, and I don't think we can uninvent a technology. Once a society has taken a technology on board, I don't think it rejects that technology. I think ecstasy is here to stay, and I think we've got to start to look at ways as a society of dealing with that problem.
Well, it's scary because, I mean, we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I was thinking about it the other day, I've done drugs. Does it mean I'm going to have to form kids? Does it mean I'm going to have, you know, like kids that have got brain damage? Is it going to affect me in later life? You just don't know anything.
One fancies she might miss them.
Not even the sun is prepared to take Madame's little outburst.